Okay guys, so for this little sequence we're focusing on the Achilles tendon. A lot of skaters I've spoken to do tend to get pain or have had pain on the back of from the heel kind of up the back of the ankle there, the Achilles tendon. And the first port of call, what our brain is telling us to do when we get this pain, is to stretch it. We'll tend to put our foot on the end of a step and drop the heel down or drop our knee forward, so we're trying to lengthen that because it kind of feels nice when you're doing it. Tendons respond very differently to muscles. The idea is we want to get blood flow to the painful area, and it's very easy to get blood flow to a muscle. You just move it. If I was to just do this with my arm, the more I do that, the more blood flow is going to be drawn to the area I'm moving. Tendons behave a little differently. Then they don't draw blood in through movement. They draw blood in through loading, through weight and through force. An example you see here when you're skating is when you're predominantly stretching your Achilles. So doing this kickflip, as you bend down, the Achilles stretches to help create that elasticity. You then ollie, but the problem then is when you land, you're going to land back into that stretched position, whereas we're never really actually loading the Achilles tendon. We're only ever stretching it over and over again. The disclaimer for this, you have to go by how it feels, how much pain or how much discomfort you have. Think of a scale of 1 to 10. Don't go over a 3 or a 4. And the next day, so the day after you do the exercises, it shouldn't be particularly painful. It can be painful for a couple of hours afterwards, that's totally normal, but don't let it go over a 3 or a 4. If it does, that means it's not responding well to that particular movement. So today we're going to do 2 different movements, an isometric hold and then a kind of very light plyometric movement. So you need to work out which of those 2 is helping it. So with the Achilles tendon, it attaches, there's your heel bone, up into, obviously there's muscles and everything going on here. A thick piece of tendon runs up there. And like I said, most people, what they want to do is stretch it so they'll either shift their shin bone forwards whilst pushing the heel down to lengthen the tendon. Whereas, like I said, what we want to do is load it in a particular position. And that position will be slightly different for all of us. If you have what's called insertional Achilles tendon pain, where the pain is almost towards the base of the heel as opposed to up the back of the ankle, that won't respond very well at all to stretching, any sort of stretching. So you need to be a bit more conservative with where you position your heel when you do the first exercise, which we'll run through. Right then, let's start loading the crap out of this Achilles tendon. So 2 variations, loaded and unloaded. Start with the unloaded if you're unsure, but like I said, your Achilles wants to be loaded. It wants to have weight put through it. But initially you need to find the position where you're feeling that most. So I'm going to use a wall. I'm going to stack as much of my body weight over the middle of my foot as I can. Take the other foot off the floor. Then I'm imagining I'm trying to push through all of my toe knuckles. Not the toes themselves necessarily, but the toe knuckles, little toe across the big toe. And I'm trying to almost push down and force as much of my body weight down as I can whilst keeping that heel off the floor. And you need to find a position where you feel it most in the Achilles. For some of us it might be a bit higher, for some it might be a little bit lower. For me, I've got a little bit of insertional Achilles, so for me it's a little bit lower. Okay, so you're just going to push down, push down, push down. 45 seconds of this. This isn't passive. We're not just finding a position and just hanging out and just chilling. This wants to be hard work. And ideally get to the point where you almost 45 seconds is done and you just have to drop. So first of all, no weight. Just to get the sensation of where you want your heel to be and how you want it to feel. Then adding weight is pretty important because, like I said, the tendon responds to load. So the heavier the better. So I got 28 kilo kettlebell here. I'm going to hold it in the same hand of the leg that's on the floor. Same setup. Stack everything. Let that weight pull down and I'm almost resisting it a little bit so I can feel that tendon really taking all of the load. And to be honest, 45 seconds like this isn't fun, but the benefit of it is huge. Okay, so something to be aware of here is what's happening at your foot when you're in that position. What you want to avoid when that heel is off the floor is drifting onto the little toe, so the big toe comes unweighted a little bit, because then you're loading less of the tendon and more of the outside of the ankle. Same, don't drift off to the big toe, because again we're taking it off the Achilles. You want that weight to be pretty much equal from big toe to little toe knuckle. Also, try not to just push your toes into the floor, because then that becomes a toe exercise. We want to drive through the forefoot. Toes might push down a little bit, but we're not driving them into the floor. Remember, we're focusing on back here. This is about the 4th take of doing this video, and to be honest, I should have swapped ankles on the last one, because my left Achilles now is absolutely hammered. But remember, loading the Achilles is the important thing. Finding your ideal position. Is it low? Is it high? Where do you feel your Achilles loaded the most? That's the important bit. Don't start by putting your toe on the end of a step and dropping your heel down. That can be useful, but for most that can aggravate it, because the Achilles doesn't really like being slowly stretched. When it does want to get stretched, it wants to be fast, but we're not doing that here. We're just loading the tendon and getting it to respond. That's how we're going to get blood flow to it, and that's how it's going to help heal and improve. Right, movement 2 for this sequence, and that is basic calf raises. However, we're going to do the calf raises in a squat position rather than a standing position. This helps us isolate down here. When we're standing, you can almost kind of use a bit of extension, use your glutes, use all these other things. We want to focus on the calves themselves. So I'm going to use the sofa, just hands on there for balance. So I'm dropping down into a deep squat here, and then I'm simply pushing up, pulling my heels up. Rather than think about just pushing into your toes, think about pulling your heels up and down. Okay, if you can get your heels all the way down onto the floor, that's good, but I got really stiff, tight ankles, so that will only happen if I lean right back, and then I'm going to use momentum. So I just want to pump up and down by pulling the heels up and down. For this one, we can drift, so you can do some calf raises pushing a little bit more through the little toe knuckle, some pushing a little bit more through the big toe knuckle, and others pushing through both. You want to do these in about sets of 30, so it might be the idea to do 10 on the outside of the toe, 10 on the inside of the toe, and then 10 on all of the toes together. 10, 10, 10. 30 should be enough. If you feel you can do more, the idea is to pretty much almost get to failure with these, to get to the point where you can only just lift your heels off the floor. So coming off the isometrics with the Achilles, going onto that, you should massively get a shitload of blood flow down the whole calf, Achilles, heel complex, which is what we want. We want to draw as much blood to this area as we can, because that's what helps heal, strengthen, and just make everything feel a hell of a lot better. So isometrics, load them up heavy, 30 to 45 seconds, 30 reps of the calf raises. One set of these could be enough, but again, go by how you feel. If you can feel you can do multiple sets, another 2 sets, have at least a minute to 2 minutes rest between each. The isometrics is the number one. That's the one thing to do. Load the hell out of that Achilles. Do it every day, and then over time, it should hopefully start to feel better. If it doesn't, reduce the load a little bit, maybe reduce the time a little bit. You just need to go by how it feels, and how it feels the next day is your guide. If that pain scale is still on a 3 to 4, keep doing it. If it goes up to a 5 or 6, rein it back in a little bit. Take some weight off, do slightly less time. You need to find your balance for the two, because we'll all be slightly different. Let me know if it helps, drop it in the comments. I've got a bunch of programs. There's a foot and ankle program, I've got a hip program, I've got a knee program, and a general all over generic program aimed at skaters or surfers over 40. Link will be in the notes for this, but yeah, share it with anybody who's had some issues and needs a bit of help.